relative project when we explore different perspectives on this time, on what resilience is to all of us from many different angles. So I'm super excited to hear your perspective, and thank you for your generosity to share. Before I give word to you, I would like to introduce you properly to the others that don't know you. So my friend and also colleague coach, Oz Hepworth, is a life coach focusing on positive mindset or cultivating positive mindset so that people can fulfill their dreams, wants, and desires. Would you like to add anything to it?
Well said.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yay.
Lucie.
Okay. Thank you for saying yes. So usually my first question that I ask my guests is, what does resilience mean to you?
So a few points come up. Resilience involves doing something even if you don't feel like doing it, because a lot of times we don't feel like doing something that we committed to. So resilience is acknowledging that lack of feeling to do it and do it anyways. A good analogy is if you commit to something as silly as, each time I cross this bridge, I'm going to pick up a pebble and throw it in the river. Right? That could be your commitment. And then one day you walk over the bridge and you're halfway home and you don't feel like going back and doing what you committed to. So resilience is choosing to backtrack, go to the bridge, pick up the pebble and throw it in, even if you didn't feel like it, even if it was inconvenient. Another side of resilience is going against what people may say of your commitment. So some people might hear you make this commitment to, each time I cross this bridge, I'm going to throw in a pebble, and they scoff at it. This is stupid, it's silly, what's the point? Resilience is pushing past all that and doing it anyways.
I love it. So what I'm hearing is a new word that hasn't come up yet so far with my guests, and I'm hearing commitment. What about a commitment makes it integral to resilience, sounds like?
So how would commitment and resilience coincide with one another? They sort of like feed one another, because you could have resilience, but if you're not committed, your resilience is weak. And if you are not resilient in certain things, it's easy to not be committed. So they're sort of like twins in a sense. Or the analogy that popped to mind is like the sun and the moon, right? The reason we see the moon at night is because the sun is shining on it and we're seeing the reflection of the sun. So maybe the reason resilience and commitment are so intertwined is because of that sun-moon relationship.
Beautiful. Wow. What a unique definition of resilience. I love that. Maybe we can look at it more if there would be a story from your own personal life experience that you would be willing to share with all of us of resilience.
Yeah. So there's a few that come to mind. One is from when I was way younger, back in my high school days. I was in wrestling, and I wrestled since I was in kindergarten. So all the way through kindergarten to graduating high school, I was in wrestling. And wrestling is one of those sports that you cannot rely on your team members. I mean, they help you train, but when it comes down to your match, it's individualized. And my junior year, I was ranked number 1 in my weight class. And I made it all the way to the state finals, and I lost. So I got second place. And I could have said, screw this, I'm not doing this more. Like, that loss could have really crippled me, right? Because I'm supposed to win. The expectation, again, weaving back in this idea of what others may think. It's like, oh, Oz is going to win, and I lost by 1 point. And resilience comes in to say, okay, next year, even if I lose, I'm still going to train, I'm still going to commit, I'm still going to do all these things, even if the desired outcome from before didn't happen. Resilience comes in, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to apply all the lessons that I learned from this past experience, and I'm going to do it again. So that would be an example of resilience, of doing something, and not that cliche definition of insanity, do something, expect a different result. In this context, it's do something, learn your lessons, grow, develop, evolve, and then try again. And the resilience is the fortitude that gets you through all that.
What would you say you were committed at that moment that supported you in moving forward and staying and taking the action?
It's hard to say, because at that time, my level of like awareness and self-reflection was pretty low. So I think it was just, there's nothing else to do. Like, this is what I do. Maybe part of it is like, this is my identity. And this is only me looking back on how my high school self might have seen it. This is my identity. So if I'm not wrestling, what else am I going to be? What else am I going to do? So part of it was just also reinforcing my own self-identity.
So would that be
in that context?
So commitment to connecting to yourself, or to whatever the identity provided for you?
Yeah, commitment to also doing better the next time. Like, if I was to try and tap into it, like, okay, I didn't do it this time, so next time I'm going to commit to doing it again. Or I'm going to commit to striving no matter what.
That brings up a need for growth. Would you say that would be a commitment to growth or learning?
Yeah, growth, learning, challenging oneself. Also, I would say putting myself in situations where I wasn't the best person. So meaning, like, in the context of wrestling, instead of training with people at my level, I consciously chose to train at a level of people that were better than me. And if they weren't skilled, if their skill wasn't better than me, their weight class was higher than me. So my senior year, I wrestled 119 pounds.
Wow.
So I would train with my weight class, but I would also train with the people that weighed 160, 180 pounds as well. So if I couldn't challenge myself by training with somebody with a higher skill than me, I at least added something in there that made it more difficult for me. And that meant wrestling with people that were at a higher weight class. So they had leverage, all these things over me. So I had to really refine my own skill set to still beat them.
It sounds like the commitment to overcoming challenges, or to really growing stronger and better, and putting the obstacles and making the obstacle or the weights, let's say if it's weightlifting, you would be putting bigger weights. Yeah,
and the resilience is, oh, I might lose to this guy who weighs 170 pounds, but I'm still going to go. I'm still going to train. Next time I'll get him, because this time he used his weight. So next time I'll make these micro adjustments so that his weight is against him.
So if we zoom out from the specific story into, for anybody else, let's say in business, if they lose a customer, instead of giving up, I'm never going to do this again, reminding themselves why they're doing it, or what would you say? So for you,
the first thing that came to mind was, the first thing that came to mind is, say I lose a customer or client. First and foremost, focusing on how they became my client in the first place. So instead of putting my focus on, I lost this client, I zoom out and somewhat detach from that. And then I focus in on what steps led to them being my client in the first place. So was it my salesmanship? Was it the product? Like, whatever brought them to say yes to be my clients? And look at that. And then there's a few distinctions there. Were they the right client for me, or did I just say yes to them because I needed a client, or was it a good fit? Right? Because it's kind of like human relationships. Sometimes I've seen people get in relationships just because they need a partner, and it's not healthy for them. Same with business. Maybe you have a client because you need money, but ultimately that's not a right fit. So resilience is also having the fortitude to be like, oh, that wasn't right for me. So let me, again, reassess my situation, and I'm still going to continue forward. And next time I'm going to choose somebody that's also a right fit for me. Instead of saying, oh, I need a client, I need a client. It's like, is this client also going to help me be the best person? Is this customer going to help me bring the best product forward moving forward?
So what I'm hearing, if I'm hearing correctly, it would be almost the value or commitment to the value of learning and growth. Again, and through asking questions and finding the lessons, what can I learn from this failure or this lack of results or whatever, or breakup in a relationship? What are the lessons that I can learn? So the commitment to growth and learning sound like, and also becoming a better person. So that could be a commitment to what would be the name of that area of becoming a better person. How could we call that commitment to something, to this?
Commitment to non-attachment to your old self.
So it seems like another level of or layer of growth would be personal growth and reinvention.
Yeah, letting go of, because especially if you've been in business for a while, hopefully you've grown as well. So the person who you were in the beginning is not the same as the person you are now in your business. But if you still try to apply old behaviors that you used to apply in your new iteration, you're going to get, it doesn't show evolution in yourself. So also part of resilience is trusting yourself that the next step you're taking is the right one for you, and you can let go of old thoughts, old beliefs, old values that are no longer of service.
How do you know what is no longer in service?
It's hard to put this one in words. So I used the word feeling earlier, so it could be how it feels to do said action. Right? Because weaving back into like the mindset when I was in wrestling, it was like go, 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 competition, really hostile. And then I carried that like mindset into my early to late 20s. And it helped me achieve success. It helped me make the money I always wanted to make, so on and so forth. But ultimately, when it came to growing as a man, like tapping into like my whole self, which means feelings and emotions, that behavior of strictly competition, only focused on the task at hand, was no longer of service. So either how it feels, and if that's a little bit out of the realm of somebody's capacity, like, I don't know how I feel, right? It'd be like, are you getting the results you want? Because there was a time when I was realizing, oh, this behavior is no longer helping me because I'm wanting new results. Like I'm wanting to cultivate deeper connections with people. I'm wanting to have more insightful conversations, and approaching them with the like competitive, I'm gonna win mindset didn't facilitate that. So I wanted an outcome, and the way in which I was approaching said outcome was never bringing it to me. So taking a step back and realizing, like, oh, this old way of doing something is not helping me reach this new task, this new goal.
So what I'm hearing in your resiliency toolkit, a part of it, it sounds like taking the step back and reflecting on, if I'm not getting the results, if I'm not feeling the way I want to feel, or having whatever I want to have, take a step back and reflect what's going on. What is that I want more of? What doesn't serve me and why? Kind of figuring that piece out.
Yeah, and the resilience comes from, I would also say, weaving in some courage to be honest with yourself. Because some of it involved me having to be humble and like, oh, yeah, I was doing it wrong. And not to admit it to you or Joe or anyone else, but to honestly say that to myself, like, oh, I was wrong here. And resilience is taking that self-admission of I was wrong and still persisting. Whereas not having resilience is like, I'm wrong. And then you cascade into I'm a failure, I'm worthless, all the negativity. Whereas the resilience is you take it in, I was wrong, and okay, this is what I'm going to do moving forward.
That brought up a thought of disconnecting from the behavior almost, or whatever happened, or what serves you or doesn't serve you. And instead of identifying with I am a failure, saying, well, this is something that I used to do that doesn't work anymore, so I need to try something else. Like disconnecting it from our identity. Would you say that?
Yeah.
How would you call that tool in your toolbox?
Your actions and their outcome don't determine who you are. So, for example, I said I was in wrestling, so therefore there was this false construct that I am a wrestler instead of I'm this person, right? And even now I do coaching and education, and my main thing is positivity, but I am not identified by positivity. Like, it's just one of the major tools that I use in my tool set to help influence, or not influence, help empower my resilience, right? Because again, I have the option to go down a negative mindset or a positive mindset, and choosing to go down a positive mindset is a form of resilience.
What would you say needs to happen before somebody can make the switch? Or what happens to you? How did you get even into the positive mindset thing? What supported you in the switch or switching?
Yeah, I'm sure many other people get to this point. Like, we have this saying, I hit rock bottom. There's a reason it persists in our culture, in our languaging, in the way we communicate. Because sometimes we have to hit rock bottom before we're willing to let go of those unhealthy behaviors, right? So what got me into positivity is back in 2017, again, that my actions, my behaviors, my ways of being in the world were no longer of service. So therefore, my relationship of many years had deteriorated. I had lost tens of thousands of dollars in investing. I wasn't where I wanted to be in my own life. So again, I was still behaving in a certain way, and it wasn't getting me the results. It was actually causing deterioration, right? But I wasn't seeing it. It wasn't until like I hit rock bottom. I remember having like a argument with my partner at the time, and she left the apartment, and then I had this like flash of, oh my gosh, I just want to end it. And like thoughts of suicide passed through my mind.
Oh, yeah.
And thankfully, I had enough years of like yoga and meditation that another part of my brain clicked in and said, hey, you're in a bad place. Like this isn't your normal thinking. And the fact that you're thinking that shows that you're like at rock bottom. Like you're not where you should be. So in that experience, I was like, even though I was in so much emotional, because it wasn't physical pain. It's not like I got hit by a car, but it was like physical, emotional pain. And I was just like, I don't know how to end this. I'll just end it. And I can see why a lot of people get there. And thankfully, another part of me kicked in, whether you call it grace, God, blessings, kicked in and said, hey, first of all, acknowledge that you're there. Like you're at rock bottom, you're in this dark cave. Now, what are you going to do about it? And this is where I would say years of being in sports cultivated like that seed of resilience, and it like activated. So I did two things. One, I went and talked to people in my spiritual community, and I was honest with them, because a lot of times when you're in that dark place, you think you're alone, right? No one understands me, no one gets it. But thankfully, those thoughts didn't come in. I was like, okay, let me go talk to some friends in my spiritual community, and I shared with them like the hardships I was going through. And then the second thing I decided to do is I decided to make a positivity video every single day for a whole year. And it was a combination of hearing Gary Vaynerchuk talk about positivity, and then I've seen other people like do these 365-day challenges, and in my mind those two ideas came together. So I was like, okay, how I'm going to get out of this dark depression is I'm going to make a positivity video every single day for a year, no matter what. So that was the commitment, right? And then when it came to that task at hand, I didn't say, okay, in my positivity video, it's going to be 5 minutes long. There's going to be all this production. I'm going to write a script. It was like, no, I'm just going to pick up my phone, hit record, talk about something positive, stop the recording, and post it to Instagram. And that was my commitment. And then the resilience came in on those days when I didn't feel like it, right? Like weaving back in the idea of crossing the bridge and throwing the pebble in.
Yes.
It's like, oh my gosh, it's 11:50 at night. I haven't made my positivity video. I had a terrible day. I don't feel positive. Let me just quit this whole thing. Or, okay, let me dig deep. Let me breathe. Maybe I find some inspiration on Instagram. Like maybe I look to the world, people I look to, and then some of the days I would scroll and like, oh my God, this is an inspirational quote. It's like adding a little bit of light in this unpleasant place. So then from there I could speak to positivity. So that brings another idea of resilience. Is resilience also involves other people, right? Because sometimes we don't feel like it, but if we're surrounded with friends, family, a support system, a community that's like, I know you don't feel like it, man, but come on, I know you have it in you, come on. And that's why I posted my challenge on social media, because it created a social commitment. So on one hand, I know how people pleasing or caring about what other people think can be dangerous. But in that context, I used it as like a motivator, because even if people didn't know me, I would be like, maybe someone out there in the interwebs is watching my challenge and they notice I didn't meet one of the days. So I'm going to do it no matter what. And that helped fuel my resilience as well.
Can I pause for a moment here? Because I just want to acknowledge how, in a way, a beautiful reframe of what you notice about yourself. And I had a conversation with somebody else saying about, comparing and despairing sometimes, or thinking about what the other people are thinking. But it looks like that you said, okay, these are my cards. This is what I have right now. And either it can drain my energy, or it can give me energy. And it seems like in that situation, you chose to tweak it, to reframe it as, okay, this is what I have right now. This is what I'm caring what other people are saying, but let's use it for the force of good in a way and help me get out of this place. It sounds like also with the commitment to doing these videos. And by the way, we knew each other then. I remember that I met you around that time probably, and I kept seeing your videos. I was so impressed every day, nonstop. You did it. That to me was impressive. I want to say commitment is another big word that maybe there will be another series about what commitment means to you. But since commitment and positivity seems like two tools that go with your definition of resilience, if you could quickly say what is commitment to you? What does it mean?
Commitment is keeping your word to yourself, which allows you to cultivate self-belief and self-worth. Yeah, so commitment is a way of building belief and trust in yourself. So that if I say I'm going to do something and I haven't really cultivated a sense of commitment, then it's easy for me not to do it. Right? Whereas if I've cultivated a real sense of commitment within myself, I know that when I say I'm going to do something, there's this internal locus of control, as it were, of like, oh, I believe I'm going to do it. I trust that I'm going to do it. because I've committed to it.
Because you have a proven track record of keeping your word to
For
yourself.
myself. Yeah, which cultivates self-trust and self-worth, because I'm doing that ultimately because I'm valued as a person. Right? And then that extrapolates, or that can extend out to then your friend group, because then as you have worth and commitment and you show up in the world, they're like, oh, if I'm Oz's friend and I commit to be here, like I commit to go to dinner, I commit to this thing or that thing, and I've noticed how he defines commitment, I better show up. Otherwise, I'm not going to be his friend. Without judgment, right? It's just like, oh, I'm not at that level of commitment. And resilience can be tied in as well as like, oh, this person's commitment levels may be at 200 and mine's only at 50. So resilience is, even though I'm not there yet, I'm going to continue to cultivate my own internal metric of commitment.
So I'm hearing there's different, yeah. I'm seeing there's a different, like a scale of or range of commitment or levels. You've mentioned different level of commitment.
Yeah.
What is, and with commitment, it seems like it's building the commitment first to yourself, which is building the belief and trust in self as we continuously keep the word to ourselves. And it seems like you have the very, like a strong strength. Your strength is really when you put that commitment, you just stay focused. What was something that you told to yourself when it was 11:55 p.m. and you didn't want to do it? What was the thought process in your head, or what was happening that helped you stay committed and take the action, even when you didn't want to?
So in the context of the videos, part of it was, I've come this far already, why would I stop? Right? It's kind of like running a marathon. You're at mile 26 and you have 0.2 to go. When you're that far along, it's like, why am I going to stop? And that outweighs the part of your mind that's like, don't worry about it, don't do it. In that context, I also use like the social, even if it wasn't there, like even if everyone in the world's like, it's okay, Oz, that you quit, I still had it in my mind, like it's going to disappoint somebody. And ultimately it would have disappointed me. So part of it's not wanting to disappoint myself in those moments. And then as I'm looking back on it, another part of it would be, again, weaving in this like self-trust, self-worth, self-belief. I've cultivated all this equity within myself. If I don't do it at the last hour, a lot of that's going to get washed away. Even if like objectively speaking, it wouldn't have, but I felt internally like if I don't follow through on this commitment, a lot of it's going to be washed away.
So it almost sounds like that the commitment is connected to avoiding what you didn't want.
Yeah, like losing something.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just came to mind because all of these qualities, commitment, resilience, have their negative side, right? Their shadow side. Because commitment can also come into play in a negative way. Like back to when I lost money in investment, it's because I committed to these investments, and instead of pulling out of the commitment and saying like, no, I'm going to cut my loss, right? It's that whole sunken cost fallacy. I've already put all this into it. If I pull out now, I'm going to lose it all. But by not disconnecting, not making the right choice, then you lose more. Right? So sometimes commitment, that's when, like you were saying, you have to like pull back sometimes and look at it objectively. Is this commitment serving me anymore? Or is this commitment holding me down? Is it dragging me down?
What would help you answer that question?
So I don't do this often myself, which this question is a good reminder for me, is to like look back and what are my higher dreams, wants, and desires. And if so, say my dream and desire is to go to New York. Right now I live in LA and I'm going to New York, which means ultimately I need to be heading east. Right. But if and that's my commitment, I'm going to go to New York. But ultimately, New York, something really bad happens there. And I'm like, no, I'm still going to go. That's how I would determine if the commitment is bad, is where if it's no longer taking you to your ultimate destination. Right. And that helps. I think it's important to distinguish values and goals here, right? Because goal would be New York, but my value is to travel and have adventure. But if this commitment is not helping me live into my value, then I need to let it go.
So it sounds like in this metaphor perspective, the values identify what the goal is and then what the commitment is to get to the goal or to fulfill the values.
Or to fulfill, yeah. Thanks for adding that distinction. Because so the goal could be like destination points along the way. I'm going to hit Las Vegas. I'm going to hit the Grand Canyon, blah, blah, blah. So those are goals, destination points. But my commitment is to live into the value, which is more adventure, travel. So if my commitment starts to focus more on like objectives and goals, no, I must go here. I must go there, even if it's dangerous, even if it's bad, even if it's harmful to me, even if it's harmful to others, I must do it because I committed to it. It's a goal. Right? But if you commit to more values as opposed to goals, there's less inclination for loss or sunken cost fallacy. Right? And back on your question about it's 11:55, why did I commit to doing it? Because I valued the importance of going on a journey of positivity, discovering all the different ways I can find to be positive. Because I could have had a terrible day, but if I can cultivate within myself this capacity to find something positive, ultimately then when it's even a worse day, I've developed the positivity muscle to then get through it.
So it seems like the commitment would be to feeling better, to feeling lighter.
Yeah, and in the context of the positivity challenge, it was to feel positive, like not be in a dark, depressed state.
Yeah. So the value, would that be value of overall health, well-being? How would you call it in your language?
In that, I would say having a harmonious frame of mind. Because some people take this idea of positivity and they're like, you can't be positive all the time. Everything's not positive, which is true, right? That's why I like the word harmony as opposed to balance. Like instead of, I need to find balance between positivity and negativity, that's very binary, right? Even if it's off 1 degree, it's imbalanced. Whereas if it's harmony, just like in nature, everything has its ebbs and flows. So by having it be harmony, I could have a negative hour, a negative day, a negative week, but throughout that negativity, if I can find slivers of positivity, then when I have a positive month, I can use that as a growth opportunity.
So it's not bad that I am in this negative space, but it's just part of the journey. It just comes in waves. It's like harmony, like music.
Yeah.
Sometimes the note is high, sometimes it goes down, and it all creates this music almost of life. If we are poetic here.
It creates contrast. I mean, most artists will tell you you can't have art without shadow, right? Because that's what gives contrast and clarity to the beautiful things. And if we're unwilling to acknowledge that part, then we are trying to create a false reality. Like things only need to be light. And if I see anything negative, I can't have it. That's dismissing a big part of life, a big part of duality. Because when nighttime comes, we're not like, ugh, it's negative, right? When the moon comes, we're like, oh, that's negative. We allow all these things to come in their due time. And it's the same for our own feelings, our own emotions, our own successes, our own failures. And what I understand of shame is from Brene Brown. shame is I am a bad person, and guilt is I did something bad, right? Where when we cultivate positivity and commitment, we cultivate our own worth so that if anything comes, shame can't grab hold, because like, I know I'm a good person because I've committed to these values of honesty and integrity and positivity. So therefore, I may have done a bad thing, so I feel guilty, but that doesn't mean I'm a bad person.
So it sounds like that the commitment, and it again came to the story you originally shared, the first one about boxing, that it was part of the identity. Oh, sorry, wrestling. I'm bad with that. So in wrestling, that you mentioned it was part of the identity. Mm-hmm. And now it comes with the commitment that it almost helps you keep the identity, or like creating who am I? I'm committed to my values. I am this. So kind of committing our own identity. What's coming up for you?
I would say
commitment and identity. What's the connection there?
So as I've gotten older, I have become less attached to my identity, right? So even when people ask what I do, I'm like, I could say I do a coach, or I am a coach, or I am a teacher, I work in education. And these are just labels that in my mind, I understand we use for communication, for interaction. But if I was to not be a coach tomorrow, I wouldn't be devastated. I wouldn't be like, oh my God, who am I? What am I going to do in the world? Right. So maybe in that context, I wouldn't say commitment is my identity. Like I could say, yeah, I'm a highly committed person, but there's parts of my life that commitment doesn't get applied, right? Like I'm not committed to having a pet because I know I don't want to do that. Even if there's like, oh my gosh, pets are awesome. But to me, there's no inclination to make that commitment. And that's another part of it, is as I've cultivated my own sense of commitment, if something comes along and it won't match with it, I'm like, no thanks. Which helps me avoid getting in situations where I'm not being my true self, or I'm not being authentic. Like, oh, Oz, do you want to do this thing? Will you commit to it? And I could just say yes, because I know how to be committed. But maybe it's something I don't want to do. And I could have resilience and say, I committed to this, I'm going to do it anyways. But the whole time I'm miserable, I'm unhappy, I'm making the people around me unhappy. Whereas initially I should have just said, no thanks, it's not for me. Because my identity is not tied up in commitment.
Because you're choosing what you're committing to.
Yeah.
Sounds like according to the values.
Yeah.
That, and you even said it, the dreams, wants, and desires. Probably that's why you added it in your coaching as kind of key things. What would you say is the role of them? Dreams, wants, desires.
I think a lot of people dismiss their own dreams, wants, and desires because of shame. That could be like a key factor as to why they dismiss them. Mm-hmm. And then another factor could be that my dreams, wants, and desires don't map to what you think I should have as a dream, want, and desire. And because I am worried about what you think of me, I'll dismiss them. Right. So each commitment, say I'm in that mindset and I commit to certain things. Each one of those commitments, even though I have the resilience to do them, it's not fulfilling my inner satisfaction, right? It's not fueling my soul, right? Whereas if I become aware of my own dreams, wants, and desires, and then start to cultivate commitment towards fulfilling them, each step I make in fulfilling them, I feel more fulfilled. I feel more inspired. I feel more myself.
If I'm hearing it correctly, it seems like you're bringing a totally new perspective on resilience that I myself didn't think of. You tell me. So what seems like is in this sense, resilience, as you've mentioned before, when you go somewhere, when you say yes to a social meeting, let's say, that you really didn't want to go to, a party or whatever, and you are miserable there, you said, I had the resilience, okay, I go. If the definition of resilience is doing even when I don't want to. Versus in the other sense of resilience, that it was positive, bounce back from the hardships. But it seems like the resilience in your perspective is not necessarily good always. It depends on the commitment, and that commitment depends on what kind of values, clarity on the values, then commit to them, and then make sure that the resilience is towards that commitment, not to something that doesn't serve you. That you could be resilient, but in the wrong direction. Let's say if you're in LA, you want to go to New York, but for some reason you're going south, resiliently.
Yeah.
So
I
in that
must
sense,
keep
I
going.
must keep going.
I'm resilient. I'm committed. Yeah.
Yes. So kind of be careful in your definition of resilience. Resilience is not always a good thing if we are going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. I think resilience, commitment, all these principles of life, they need to be used like a scalpel, like a tool. Because a scalpel can be used to like cut off a boil and keep you healthy, or a scalpel can be used to really hurt you. So it's like, that's when you need to apply wisdom. And like you said earlier, stepping back and looking at like, what kind of results are coming from this? And not just external results, but like, how do I feel? Do I feel like I'm leaning into my dreams, wants, and desires? Or do I feel more unhappy? Do I feel more dissatisfied? Do I feel more disconnected? And we've met many people in our lives, and we might know them close to us, that they hate their job, but they're resilient. They hate their life, but they're resilient. I get up, I go to work, I drive in 2 hours of traffic in LA, I do my job, I come home, blah, blah, blah. So they have resilience, right? They keep doing it, but they're unhappy, they're miserable. Why? Because said resilience is not applied to fulfilling their own wants, dreams, wants, and desires.
So in this sense, resilience is the tool, but always be mindful of where are we resilient and of the commitment that is there, or what are the values.
Yeah, how you're applying those two things.
What would happen if something happens unexpectedly? Let's say in your life, if anything happened, what was the commitment there, or the resilience in that situation?
So in that context, again, it's what's the environment or the context in which you're trying to apply resilience. So if you need to bounce back from something, that's when resilience can really be of value, because it pushes you to get up and dust yourself off, right? Like, I'm not going to commit. So this one was not as like mind shattering, but I was supposed to go to Japan earlier this year, and it didn't happen because of travel restrictions, so on and so forth. And I could have just said, screw it, no. And then I could have came back to LA all ashamed, like, oh guys, I said I was going, I didn't go, right? But my resilience is, I'm still gonna go. It might not be happening now, but I still have the commitment and the resilience to push through. And here's where resilience is more internally applied. I'm gonna have the resilience to push through my own discomfort of what I think people might think of me not getting to go when I wanted to go. So sometimes resilience has to be applied to your own internal self-judgment. Like, oh, I told Lucie I was going to Japan, and then it didn't happen. I was away in Utah for 5 months, and now I'm back in LA. So it felt for me like backtracking. Like I didn't follow through with one of my commitments. The goal didn't happen like I wanted to have happen. And all of that was out of my control, right? Because I can't go to the Japanese government and say, let me in, right? All those things are out of my control. So resilience comes in when my own self-doubt, my own self-judgment, my own self-criticism wants to raise its head and say, see, you're a failure, all these negative things.
Yes.
resilience comes in and says, no, you're resilient. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. You can still teach, you can still coach, so on and so forth. So that's more of an internal resilience. And that, I guess it could be applied to when you lose a client, when you lose your job, when you lose a partner, right? Say you break up, resilience comes in, and it can be used as a anecdote to self-doubt, self-judgment, self-criticism. Because I know for myself in the past, I've been really brutal on myself. Like, see, you're a failure, and like push my own like face in the mud and rub it in. See, and resilience in that context is also infused with self-love and self-compassion.
Would there be the commitment that helps the resilience?
In the context of not going to Japan, that one would be more. So if I was to weave in the thread of commitment, it would be commitment to self-love, commitment to self, being kind to myself. So again, it's how is commitment applied? So it's commitment with commitment to self-kindness, commitment to self-love.
And
then
resilience,
then resilience can come and say, anytime those things try and smack down my commitment to self-love, the resilience is like, no. And the positivity, right? Like, if negativity is over here, I can implement positivity.
So it seems like even in this example that when you use the distinction between goals and values, so even in the physical, literal actually move that you wanted to make from the US to Japan, it didn't work out. There's a pandemic and stuff happening that we cannot control or predict even. So at that time, when things didn't work out, the old or automatic ways of thinking, or the previous ways of thinking, where you're a failure, this is shameful situation, but your commitment to self-love helped you to become resilient through that and continue, you say?
Yeah, and to face, because as we grow as people, it's not like, oh, I've conquered self-judgment, I'll never experience it again. It just comes up in different ways, right? Or I no longer care about what other people think. Unfortunately, because we're humans and we've evolved to be social creatures, there's always going to be a part of us that cares about what other people thinks. Right? So in not wanting to go, there was this constant input of, why aren't you going? When are you going? And I always had to, there was parts of me where I would be internally frustrated because like, I don't know. I don't know when I'm going to go. And other parts was like, oh, then I realized I'm not going. And then I was like, what am I going to do now? I have to now tell all these people that I'm not going. And how do I address that? And I'm trying to think how resilience played a role. So the resilience came in through positivity, self-love, and then the resilience was like, I have all these tools, I need to apply them in this moment, because I'm resilient enough to stick by self-love and self-kindness. Whereas if I didn't have resilience, I would have crumbled, and then I would have stayed in Utah in shame.
How do people connect to self-love as a value? What helped you connect to self-love as, this is a value I want to commit to?
That really came through, or I gained a deeper understanding of it when I was reading this book, The Courage to be Disliked. I forget the author, but it's a Japanese author. And again, the book's The Courage to be Disliked. And I'm going to paraphrase it, but somewhere in there, he makes the argument, or he puts forth this idea that we are all valued as people. Just by being in existence, we are valued. And then the person's like, what do you mean by that? Like, even if I'm sitting alone in my apartment, I'm valued as a person. He's like, think about it. The mere fact that you're alive on this planet you bring value to your mom, to your dad, because they're like, I'm thankful my child is alive. Or you bring value to your kids because your kids are like, I'm thankful my mom or my dad is alive. You bring value to your colleagues because they're like, I'm thankful that I have this person in my life as a colleague or as a friend, just by you merely sitting in your apartment doing nothing. The mere fact that you exist is bringing peace of mind, joy, love, pleasure to someone else.
Wow.
So once I heard that, it like took my own understanding of self-love to a new level, because therefore it was no longer just theory. It was no longer just an affirmation of I am kind, I am worthy, so on and so forth, right? Because there was still a part of my like ego or my subconscious that was like, that's not true. Because of all of these failures, all of these other times when you weren't the best person, right? But having that one last moment of just by being in existence, you are bringing value to the world.
Wow, that's beautiful. And it sounds like reconnecting even to like receiving the love from the environment, from something bigger than just ourselves.
Yeah.
And it could be from other people, love from other people, parents, community. Did you mention before that it was even to your spiritual community? So there's like for some people, it could be their God, or whatever spiritual belief or religious belief they have that is bigger than them, that can provide the sense of love. Am I on the right track here?
Yeah, and it's not that they're giving, it's not that the love has to come from them, but it's more like acknowledging their existence or acknowledging that they appreciate you helps the love cultivate within you, because that's what they're seeing, right? It's another way to put it is like they already see, like I see the light in you, like regardless, like you could be in a dark room, and if no matter how many times I'm like, Lucie, you are loved, you are amazing, you're beautiful, but if you don't believe it, it's really hard for that to break through. But the moment you acknowledge your own value, now all that love from other people can flood in and fill you, because now you're allowing it to soak into you. Whereas before, there's all these internal walls of like, thank you, Oz, but I'm not really this, I'm not really that. But the moment you dissolve that wall within yourself, then when I offer you love, kindness, praise, it has the ability to really sink into who you are.
I have a question whether the wall is the way of resiliency, where it wouldn't be serving us.
Yeah. So I mentioned in my early 20s, I would apply these like competitive mindsets of like go, go, go. And that led me on what we use in the coaching world or business world as like the lone wolf. Like I'll do it all myself. I'll take care of myself. Like that's a sign of resilience, right? I don't need anyone. I'll do it on my own, so on and so forth. But ultimately what that does is build up walls. And then you end up on the top of the mountain all by yourself. So your resilience took you to the top of the mountain. And when you go to celebrate, no one's around. And there's that African proverb, if you want to go somewhere fast, go alone. But if you want to go somewhere far, go with others. And I guess it's the same with self-love. Of if now that I'm thinking I'm only coming to this understanding now, as I do all these affirmation of self-love and do all this meditation around self-growth, so on and so forth, if I'm not doing it in relation to other people, it only gets me so far. But the moment I start to give myself permission to be loved by others and realize just by me being here, I'm bringing value to Lucie and Lucie's bringing value to me, and really fully understanding that. And then I can go further with my self-love. And that would be using resilience, because then I commit to the value of I am valued. And if anything comes up that tries to sway me away from that, say I have a failure, say I make a mistake, whatever it is, and the negative part of me wants to step in and see you are not good, you are not worthy. I've now cultivated a sense of resilience in myself. Like, no, I am valued.
So the resilience in this sense, if we look at resilience against, so in your example, that could be resilience against the negative thoughts in our head that we have, the negative even judgments about ourselves and things that our mind tells us, oh, you are this, that is something not good. Resilience against other people's judgments. But I'm hearing also, if we sum it up in a way, resilience against could be a resilience against the good from other people.
Yeah.
The good thoughts of other people and good, how would you say good judgments? Is there a way to describe compliments?
Yeah, the kindness and compliments from others.
Yeah.
I've definitely experienced like, oh, Oz, you're a good person, you're a great coach, you're this, you're that. And I'm just like, no. Like I don't receive it. Like it's almost like
you're
dismissive.
Resilient against putting the wall of resilience.
Yeah, because I don't need your opinion. I don't need your feedback. I don't need it. I don't need it because I can do it by myself. I have resilience. I have fortitude. I can do it by myself. And not realizing that I dismissed somebody, just threw them away when they were genuinely trying to come up and be like, oh my God, I appreciate you. And what you're doing in the world is valued.
So at that moment, it seems like you were committing to doing it yourself.
Yeah, in the past. And it wasn't like a conscious commitment, I will do this on my own.
Yeah.
That formed from my own childhood of like needing to do it on my own.
Yes.
Like not having someone to rely on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, old patterns no longer serving me anymore. Because like, oh, now there are people around. In fact, I crave having other people around because there's a reason entrepreneurs are depressed and sad, because it sucks being on a journey by yourself because there's no one to celebrate it with. There's no one to turn around and give a high five to.
So it seems like the resilience in the past, long past, was to build a wall against negative influences, or I do it alone because there is nobody to help me anyway. So I'm going to do this alone. And as you kept doing it alone, then you discovered that, but I still do want to feel connected. And if I am doing this, I'm doing it alone, I cannot really connect because there's the wall of resilience against others.
Yeah.
So in that way, it comes with the commitment, and then to commitment to what I want to commit, not to being alone, but to or doing it alone, but sounds like to feel connected with others, to going farther than going alone. How did you determine it? Was it going far and then going fast? Oh, that was a distinction.
The African proverb is, if you want to go somewhere fast, go alone. Right? Because then it's easy. You don't have to, I don't have to talk to you about it. I just go. So if you want to go somewhere fast, go alone. But if you want to go somewhere far, go with others. And there's an interesting point, because earlier in our conversation, you asked, like, how do you determine when you need to shift your approach? Or how do you determine when resilience is no longer helpful or commitment is no longer helpful? So I did the first 365-day challenge, and that was for me to get out of depression. And then in 2020, March 2020, I was starting to feel my mindset dip a little. And I was like, something in my day-to-day practice is not helping me stay positive. So I'm going to commit to making another 365-day challenge around positivity. But when I did it, started in 2020, I was not depressed. I could just feel the decline. I was like, this gave me a lot of practice in the past. I know I'll get value from it for myself. So I started it March 1st, 2020. And then March 14th, is when like at least LA shut down, and that's when we were in full pandemic mode.
Yes.
So in that context, it like framed me up to withstand the mental roller coaster that was 2020, right? But in that, I also realized I wasn't fully getting out of it what I had gotten in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I went into it, I'm going to do this challenge for myself, not realizing that I don't need to do it just for myself anymore. Right? So I was repeating an old pattern because I got results from it. So I was like, let me do the challenge again. It's going to help me. And then somewhere along the way, I was like, I'm not getting the same like fulfillment from this anymore. Now it feels like a grind. Now it feels like a task. Like, I just wake up and I'll make my video. There was days when I was like, I've done this so many times now, it just feels routine. And what was missing is I wasn't involving others in it anymore. Or what I could have done better in that one is involve other people. Right. So instead of me being on this journey alone, I could have brought other people in and like had them come on the journey with me. Which people try to tell me along the way, but I was stubborn. I was like, no, I don't know how to do that. Let me just stick to this. Right. My old pattern is like, I've done this before, I can do it again. But again, when I finished the 365 challenge in February of this year, February 2021. And the elation I got was just like, now I no longer have to do the video. Whereas when I finished the first one, it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Right, so again, that's an example of the same pattern, the same implementation, but at the end I felt different. And now it's like, because I try to apply the same old way to get a different result.
It seemed that in the past it was from the place of the rock bottom, as you said.
Yeah.
It was really to survive and just do it. This was and it was working at that time. You did also have a support of the community, but it was mostly for you when you were by yourself at 11:55 p.m. to be able to still do it.
Yeah.
And it seems like since you were no longer in this place, you moved, that supported you in getting into a new place.
Yeah.
And it seems like that place gave you another value that seems like you're pursuing, and that is to be connected, not doing any alone anymore. And that was missing from, you mentioned I could have brought more people on the journey or do it for others.
There's a few like layers, and I want to be respectful of your time, so let me know. But in that context, I was still trying to frame up positivity and how it would help me. Whereas in retrospect, it would have been like, Lucie, what's going on with you? What's going on with your life? And then from what you share with me, I could create a video around helping you. Because you haven't gone through like all these videos of positivity, your positivity muscle might be low. So it's like, what can I do to help her start practicing positivity at where she's at? Right? Because not everyone's going to wake up and say, I'm going to make a video every day around positivity. But they can do a little practice of, I'm going to wake up and smile for 1 minute, 1 whole minute every day. And sharing that with people, like making the shift of the content I'm creating is not just for me, but it's to teach and help other people be positive.
The value that comes to mind is serving others, supporting others, contribution to others.
Yeah.
So that value really would support you in that committing to that value and aligning the goal and action with it after.
And then also for myself, like giving myself the acknowledgement of what I have to share is valuable. So therefore I'm going to continue to share it, as opposed to the cynic saying, no one cares, no one watches, right? Realizing that, because once I stop, then people are like, where's your videos? I miss your videos. But the cynical part of me is like, but where were you when I was making them? I didn't know you were there. Because it's the internet, we don't know personally
Yes.
who's watching our stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I stopped making them that they're like, where are you? What's going on? So that also helped me understand, oh, just by me being, to reinforce that principle of just by being in the world, you bring value to people.
That brings us to our end of our session today, our recording, and what a beautiful
Okay.
ending in a way, because you have shared, you were in the world, and we now recorded it, your experiences, your perspectives, your challenges, your view of resilience and commitment, and how positivity and commitment to feeling better, and the support of community, and reaching out even and receiving the support from the community made a difference, and life-changing and life-saving difference.
Yeah, for sure.
So really, truly, thank you for sharing something that we usually don't talk about in our regular day-to-day conversations. Oh, this is what happened to me in that situation when I was at the rock bottom. So your message hopefully will inspire, or could help those when we never can hear from them or meet them in person. But having more of these conversations is, I believe, that's why we have the Project Elephant, for learning from each other, from learning from our experiencing this, and knowing that we are not alone in this. Just like you've mentioned that when you were in the dark place, it seemed that you were the only one. And luckily you had that wisdom in you that moved you to hope, and reaching out and realizing and committing to the value of feeling better. So anybody who's watching, if you are in that difficult place, please know that you're not alone. And there are people that care about you and value you. And that you matter, and your life matters, even when it may not seem like it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome.
Any final words, how you would like to wrap it up?
Yeah, I would just invite anyone for those of you that see this, to check out a documentary that somebody made about me and my positivity journey.
Oh, wow.
A good friend of mine has a production company, and based on watching my own evolution into positivity, he's like, hey Oz, I want to make a documentary about how you got into all this. So I made a documentary, and it's called Sup Beautiful People, and it sort of gives a 9-minute glimpse of my positivity journey.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank
invite
you for
people
sharing.
to check that out. And then, yeah, you can DM me on Instagram or TikTok if you just want, how can I be more positive in my life? Hit me up and give you some positivity.